Hello. 네. 네. Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this fantastic event, and it's my true honor to be here as one of the panel speakers today. I'm Jisun. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Computing and Information Systems at Singapore Management University. Maybe not many of you have heard of the SMU. SMU is one of the 7 national universities and one of the top 3 universities in Singapore, and it's located in the center of Singapore. Maybe you've heard of the Orchard. Orchard is the largest shopping district in Asia, and it's like Gangnam or Myeongdong in Seoul. And SMU is literally located at the end of the Orchard Road. So the entire campus is beautifully immersed in the modern city, and we totally love living there. And here's a brief introduction about myself. I define myself as a data scientist or computational social scientist. And as I joined SMU, together with my colleague Hyunjoo, we created a lab called SODA. SODA is a short for social data and AI, and there together we aim to develop AI-based methods and tools to better understand about human behavior and to tackle various social problems. And I'm actively working in both areas of the computer science and computational social science. I'm serving as a PC chair of IGWSM this year, top-tier conference of social computing. I'm an associate editor of EPJ Data Science, and I'm doing different activities in both areas. Myself has been featured as a prominent CSS researcher in Nature News, and some of my work has been featured in various news media, which I believe shows that how our work can contribute to society. So working in emerging a new domain of CSS has not been so easy. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about what I do and how I developed my career. And in the last 11 years, I've been tackling various social problems. But today I'd like to focus on the media study, which I've been working for long and which I are known for the best. And I've been looking into various aspects of the media ecosystem, from production, distribution, consumption, and its influence. When I started my PhD, I was so fascinated by the power of social network, how our social relationship can have an impact on our behavior. In particular, I focused on its impacts on the information diversity. I still remember that in 2009, I created my Twitter account and I started to follow my colleagues, and I started to receive all these different pieces of information that I've never thought I would get. So in the first data-driven study, we actually tried to quantify that. By using network information and social media posts of the millions of the Twitter users, we found that your social networks and social interaction can increase the topical and political diversity in your news consumption. But even though we are exposed to diverse information, it is unsure whether people actually pay attention to those diverse information. So in a way to capturing users' attention, we looked at what people have shared on social media. Using 250,000 Facebook users and their profiles and their posts, we found that even though, despite the much diversity that they exposed to, people still tend to share those information that are well aligned with their political preferences, and which we call as partisan sharing. And this partisan sharing can contribute to the problem of the echo chamber. Echo chamber is a phenomenon that people only listen to those information that are they preferred. And it is known that people become less tolerant to the opposing views if they live long in the echo chamber, which can damage the value of the democracy. And our work was the first empirical study that alarms the echo chamber problem on social media. But so people may think that this is the problem of ours. We chose wrongly, but actually the problem would exist in the production side. So media themselves can contribute to the problem of the echo chamber by having certain bias in their reporting. So I started to look into more on the production side as I joined Qatar Computing Research Institute as a postdoctoral researcher. So the QCRI is one of the 4 national institutes in Qatar, and I was a member of the social computing group. And Qatar and Doha is probably the hottest country that I ever lived in, but the QCRI was the coldest building I ever worked in. And QCRI and social computing team is like fantastic place to work and develop your career. So I would highly recommend all of you to check this place out. So we initially looked into the coverage bias by analyzing news articles published in 196 different countries. And we investigated which countries are more or less tend to be reported by the other countries. And we found a very strong regionalism, meaning that you are more likely to hear news about your neighboring news. And this work led us to work with the Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is Qatar-based news media, and it is the most popular and the largest news media in the Middle East. And these are some of the problems that the Al Jazeera team was interested in. So they actually have their own auditing team, and they were interested in whether any of their published articles have any bias. And their editorial team was interested in fact-checking for claims of the speakers in real time. So in helping them to tackle these problems, we ended up building this news aggregator called Tanbih, which aims to combat misinformation and to promote the media literacy. So we give different information at media and article level in this website. So here we construct the media profile from different angles, including like propagandistic or not, whether they have any framing bias, their factuality, and how's their audience on social media. And also we develop different NLP techniques to characterize individual news articles for those different angles. And the Al Jazeera auditing teams are actually using these features in our system. And these are more technical details, and I would love to talk more about it after the talk. And as I gain more and more experience in working in this media study, I also had a various collaboration opportunity with communication scholars and political scientists. So in particular, together with the political scientists at the University of the Constance and at the data scientists at the University of the Oxford, we were awarded a funding of $800,000 US to pursue a project called Discursive Power in Hybrid Media Systems. So in this project, we basically try to study how the media and publics are interact and affect each other in defining the topics and frames and the prominent speakers in news events. And in this project, I work toward to build the computational model to detect topics and frames and the speakers in news and social media posts. So working as a data scientist at a research lab gave me a very unique opportunity. So basically, I spent 50% of my time for doing my own research, and for 50% of my another time to work for local impact. So basically, I had many chances to work with the local business partners, including Al Jazeera, Qatar Airways, and Qatar Cancer Society. And I should admit that it was not so easy to work with the business partners. There was sometimes a very long delay to move one step forward, but it was a true joy to learn about the real problems and help them to tackle some of those issues. So and more recently, as I joined SMU, I started to look into media influence on the human behavior, for example, how that would relate to development of the racial animus or polarization. So in our recent work published at the EMNP findings, we try to predict users who would turn into hateful after the COVID-19. So we build different prediction models, and our evaluation study shows that followings only, in other words, the media exposure can reliably predict these users, indicating that the media exposure plays a significant role in a certain types of the human behavior. And polarization is essentially about changing opinions. So we try to develop a learning framework that can comprehensively represent different aspects of belief, emotions, and attitude, and together with the users. And we call it as a BEAR framework. And this framework, we believe, can be used to understand better about media influence on opinion and behavior changes. So this was my journey of last 11 years. doing media studies, and of course, I also have other works. But if I'm looking back the journey of the media study, and I think initially I was working more on theoretical implications, and I conducted many data-driven studies to test social theories and hypotheses. And over time, I became and focused more on practical implications and develop methods and models and tools to help the other social scientists and also to tackle these social problems. And here are my final comments about to the future data scientist. So if someone asks me about what would be the key to success as a data scientist, then my first comment would be, you should work on something you can be passionate about. So data science, I think sometimes can be very hard, and it's like a finding a needle from the haystack, and it takes a lot of time, and you need to dig deep and deeper to find something interesting or something meaningful. So if you're not working on a topic that doesn't interest you, then you're likely to give up easily. So work on something that interests you would be my first advice. Secondly, this is actually the comment from my colleagues, Professor Kwa. So in this journey of the media study, sometimes I felt that, oh, maybe this problem is not interesting enough for others. And maybe I should work on something more popular or hot topics. And he was mentioning that, oh, our problem is interesting if you look into in-depth, meaning that even within the media study, there are so many different aspects that I can look. And each of them really gave me a valuable insight about for different practitioners and the researchers. So I think that's another. So if you want to pursue on the data science, just look deeper, look deep and deeper. And the third comment is actually go for internship. So actually the first two studies that I introduced today, it happened while I was doing my internship at the Max Planck Institute and Young Research Lab at Barcelona. And I was fortunate enough to work on something that relates to my own research while I'm doing internship. And firstly, I learned so much from those top the leaders in these institutes. But at the same time, all these connections really gave me a great support to be a part of this community. And that was the really valuable output of this internship. And also working in abroad is very fun. So if you have any chance, just try and find some opportunity that you work with the other top researchers in other top institutes. And lastly, don't be afraid of the approaching seniors. Obviously, all the professors and other senior researchers are busy people, but they are so willing to help out. So if you if you need any help, any questions, just shoot an email. I think they would be willing to really help you out. And that was the way that how I got my PhD position as well. So this is the end of my talk. And thanks a lot for listening to my talk. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed when I was preparing this journey. And I'd love to answer any of your questions in the panel session. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello everyone. I'm Kunwoo, second presenter for KAIST AIX forum. Let me start my presentation with a brief introduction about my background. I received my PhD in KAIST 2018, and as an alumnus of this school, presenting at this forum means a lot to me, so I appreciate for this opportunity. So after PhD, I moved on to QCRI to join the data analytics group as a postdoc, and I studied the method of machine learning, data mining, and natural language processing, and etc. After 1 year and more, I moved on to UCLA to join the Department of Communication to work on some interdisciplinary projects. So as a data science, I was actively collaborating with the communication scholars, and it was really amazing opportunity for me to work with them. After that, I joined the Soongsil University in this year, March, as an assistant professor in School of AI Convergence. Today, I will share the core stories about how I started studying data science in KAIST and how I ended up working as an assistant professor in this data science school. This story begins since 2011. I was a senior undergraduate student majoring in computer science, and I really wanted to do something really cool. So I joined the startup as a software engineer. So the startup was developing a social networking service that aims to foster real-world interactions. So what I did was developing a module that can verify whether people really meet offline. And I also developed a module that can log behavior logs in app. I hope it works, but unfortunately, this app didn't work out. That's why I'm here. So we were really wondering about why our users don't use our service and don't stay and enjoy our service for a long time. Actually, answering this question was really challenging to me and to us because it was not a question of computer science. It was more a question about human psychology and sociology and etc. So yeah, I thought that So I didn't even have a skill for analyzing the data in that behavior roles at the time. So I thought I may need to study more about how to analyze behavior log, that is log in digital platforms, and model the complicated patterns. So I was originally planning to apply for graduate school of computer science, but I coincidentally stumbled on the KAIST website's admission notice. They had an open information session in Seoul. So yeah, I attended. And in the session, the Professor Mang gave a lecture about what is web science and how it should be different from the general computer science, what people generally expect. And he emphasized that web science, to better understand web and how web evolves, we need to understand human behavior because web is evolving and web has been evolving with the human participation. I was really impressed about his statement, and I thought that might be the place where I can study what I believe it is important. So yeah, I decided to apply for the master program, and yeah, I joined. And after that, I had to select. I had to have my advisor. So among the faculty members, I thought that Professor Cha's research was the most relevant to my previous interest. So yeah, I wrote down a long email what I did over the 10 years previous mailbox. So yeah, I made it. So that's how I started my journey in data science in KAIST. So during my master's, I mainly focused on studying the foundation of data science. I studied statistics, data science, machine learning, computation linguistics, and etc. And in the meantime, I was also given a chance to work on an interesting research project analyzing online game logs. So somehow it was published in top-tier conference in our field, World Wide Web. So I think it was possible because I had a great collaborator and great advisor, but having that publication was enough to make me think overconfident about my ability. So I easily decided to study more and pursue my PhD degree. In 2014, I started my PhD, and I also started my first research internship in QCRI. I worked with Dr. Ingmar Weber. Ingmar was interested in health informatics and health communication in social media. And I was interested in user longevity and user retention in online platforms. So this interest led us to working on a research project on health status sharing behaviors. A little bit of background about the projects. So many people use health and fitness app to post their health status and fitness logs in their app, and some of their users share their status on external social platforms. So in this context, we asked the question, who will keep sharing in their health status in social media for a long time and keep doing exercise? And can we predict persistent sharing behaviors from the logs shared on external social media? So what we found was an advantages of having social connections. When a health user is better connected to other users in the general social media like Twitter or Facebook, they were more likely to keep sharing their health status for a long time in the social platform and their fitness app. So yeah, that made our research to the CSW 2016, and finishing up this research was meant a lot to me because it was a simple answer to my question, which I originally got from my startup period. Even though it was taken in a little bit of different context, but I got some real answer. And also I was happy to collaborate with domain experts working in a fitness company. So while I'm working on this work, we also collaborate with the employee in my fitness part of fitness app. So this picture shows when we visit their headquarters located in San Francisco. So this becomes one of the chapters in my PhD thesis. And after some more work, I become a PhD. So I had the option for my career. I decided to keep my research career on because I really like to do research and I enjoy to solve my problem. So it was exciting. I really like doing research, but at the same time, it was a very tough period for me because I had to find some research field I can work on at least in the next 5 years or next 10 years. So after careful consideration, I decided to use as a target platform and deep learning as my tool. So there are a lot of social problems hidden in these platforms that can affect our society and make negative consequences like polarization, echo chamber, and etc. And I believe the power of deep learning can contribute to the problem. So that's how I started the project. And during my postdoc, I mainly have worked on the project using news and deep learning. So here is the favorite project. So this is the example of news article. And from this headline, you might expect the main content covers the benefits of doing yoga, but the body text is just an advertised program for doing yoga. So, but this can be problematic because many people just expect from this headline, either give some benefit, either let us know of the benefit of doing yoga. So this type of misleading headline called clickbait. So we wanted to tackle it by using deep learning model. And technically, it is challenging to detect this clickbait headline because the body text can be very long and standard neural architectures cannot capture the complicated patterns. So we design a neural network model based on inspiration of the hierarchical nature of news articles. So we design a hierarchical neural encoder by looking into news article is a sequence of paragraphs, which can be seen as each of which paragraph can be seen as the sequence of words. This is called hierarchical neural encoder and published in AI 2019. In the next project, we improved the detection model by representing a news article as a graph. And we designed a graph encoder in a similar way. So this was published in another journal. And we further developed a web prototype that really helps the readers avoid such kind of news articles. So this application called Bait Watcher, and let me show how it works from this demo. let me just describe. So when some user put their cursors on their headline, we send this API call to our servers, and our server runs the deep learning model and returns a detection probability, which is shown to the user who put the cursor. So our hypothesis was, if we show the probability to the general users, they may not select this news article. So we expect that it can contribute to the good media ecosystem. And we confirmed this in a user study. So I really like this study because we don't just develop some neural network model, but we present some use case by using that. So this is the research trilogy done during my postdoc. So in the first research, we proposed a problem and initial method. In the second work, we advanced the method. In the next work, we developed prototype system. And thanks to this research trilogy, I survived. There's a story about how this young guy becomes this faculty, data science faculty, which I believe is still young. So before finishing this talk, I just want to leave one comment to future data scientists. So if I could go back to the 10 years, I would give the same comment to myself in this young life. So failure is very common. So don't let failure stop you. So sometimes your paper could be rejected multiple times, but that doesn't mean your research is not valuable. So that you could find a good place for your paper. So even for my case, I just shared my stories of success in this talk because it is 50 minutes is too short. But my paper, for example, the CSW system paper was rejected 3 times, and my triple AI paper rejected 3 times or 4 times, and etc. So I just keep trying. So that's probably why I am made the data science faculty. So please keep in mind that. And I would like to close this talk with a famous quote of my favorite movie trilogy. Why refer? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. Thank you very much for listening.
Right. So let's start the panel. I'm gonna turn around the camera. So
hello. I cannot see myself, but I wish everything is going well. Good morning. My name is Lanukim, and thank you, Professor Cha, for the wonderful introduction. And then I am very happy to be in this workshop because it seems like I'm a person who has the social science background, and there's so much tries to turn a little bit more closer to the computer department. So I think I can share the opposite side of your view, who Professor An and Professor Bach just to talk about. So today my talk title is Sociologist Meets Data. So it's somewhat like the opposite, like data science meets other like interdisciplinary research, but it's the opposite, like sociology meets data. And then I'm going to talk about why I decided to be in this field and what kind of problems I have, or I will be also happy to answer the research, the questions that you just had from the previous panel about like the job search and then like life experiences and so on and so forth. So first of all, my research interests are like this. I define myself as a computational social scientist, and I use big data. And I say I do data science, and then my main way of doing analysis, the text analysis. And then those blue texts are my like more substantive interests, and they are more about sociology of science. So I'm studying how knowledge structure, how the science structure has been made, and then what kind of patterns we can make from those knowledge structure. And then also technology and society is one of my topics, like whether face-to-face interaction can be replaced by the online interaction. Those kind of topics are another one. And then also I am hugely interested in like social network, not only its application, but also its theory. And also one of my topics deeply involved with the gender problem. So first of all, let me talk about my background a little bit. So I'm of course, Professor Chow already introduced, but I majored in sociology and economics from Seoul National University, and then I also did my MA from sociology at Seoul National University. And then actually by the time I was interested in this kind of more like social network analysis. And this is the graph that I drew when I was a junior in the undergrad. And then it was actually the social network student movement, not just student, what should I say? It's like 총학생의 선거 is the election for school president. And then I drew this network, and then I argued that with the network structure with a bigger structural hole, they are more likely to succeed because they can exploit the benefit of weak ties as much as possible. So, and then it was really fun. It was one of my final projects from the junior. And then I feel like, oh, I like it, and I feel like I'm not too bad at it. So maybe I can pursue a little bit more. So I moved to the grad school, and then I was involved in ISDPR, which is the research center at the sociology department. And also I was working in KAIST, which is a very great archive. It's not a big data archive, but it's more like small, however, deep data with a lot of social surveys. So if you are interested in that, it's a wonderful resource. And then also, yeah, of course, the Department of Sociology is where they gave me a degree. And then after finishing my MA, and then I wanted to study, of course, more. So I moved to the University of Washington for the sociology PhD degree. And that school is just so beautiful with a lot of cherry blossoms. It's located in Seattle. So if you have a chance, you should visit late March, early April. Yeah, otherwise you can see those cherry blossoms. And my building was right in front of those beautiful trees. So the April was my favorite time every day. And then, of course, I did my coursework. I worked in the Department of Sociology. And then also I was interested in more like interdisciplinary research and also a lot of statistical advanced methods. So I was also, I took a concentration in applied statistics certificate program from the Center for Statistics and the Social Sciences. And then I could be connected from the information school, which was also very strong in the University of Washington. And then people ask me by this moment how I can be connected to this university, the information school. And that was really funny. And then I tell you a little bit more about it and how I can get to this NSF grant with the faculty in the information school, which was like, well, yeah, 1.1 million, which was pretty huge for me by the time for the social science. And then that project is actually my dissertation project, which is we titled Echo Chambers in Science. So whether, depending on what kind of search engines they use for academic search literature, like whether they use JSTOR or whether they use those academic search, the second generation academic search like Google Scholar, I argue that depending on what kind of search engines they use, I ask, has the scope of scientific knowledge been narrowed to the few top star papers, or whether it has been more diversified because the search engine gives more information more efficiently to the more interdisciplinary people. So that was our main research question. And then I still remember the moment that I walked into my advisor's office. It was a beautiful summer day in Seattle. It was a really random meeting like for the casual conversation, like how are you doing, and then you're eating well, or like, yeah, just about general life. And then all of a sudden I just talked to my advisor, like, I think Google Scholar is ruining my academic search. And then I think it's definitely changing my behavior. I feel like I'm only looking at the science and nature papers and not really other, I cannot really focus on the other papers in Google Scholar. I think it's weird. And then she said, that's an interesting research question. Why do you think about it a little bit more? So I thought it a little bit more. And then we just decided that, okay, that's interesting. And why don't you just try to take a look at some like the citation distribution or like sociology journals, which is pretty narrow in the scope, because that's what we could imagine. And then I also, I always do my best to enjoy my life. And then I just had a cup of coffee with one random friend who was actually affiliated in the information school. And then we used to play tennis together. So we were not really connected with in terms of the research interest. And then I just talked about, oh yeah, I just have this idea and then it sounds interesting. My advisor likes it. I want to develop it a little bit more, but I don't know where to go. And then she said, oh, there's a faculty member in our department who is also interested in this topic. And then he has the full data set of Web of Science. He has a full data set of the ProQuest data. And then why don't you talk to him? It's what she really offered very casually. So at the time I was not that busy. So I just casually again emailed him, why don't you meet up just for like 5 minutes? And then that meeting was amazing. And then we just read it, we just thought it's definitely doable with a big data set, and then it's gonna have much more potential than I thought. And then he already has the resources to take care of this kind of research questions. So we submitted the proposal like in 2 months to submit to the National Science Foundation grant. And then we earned it very somewhat luckily and easily. So, and then that helped me support to prepare for this project. So I could graduate after 2 or 3 years with that grant. And then the thing is that yeah, so the main part of our research is that my research question is, we don't know actually who are really searching, but they search literature and download and read inside, and they can make references. And then because I cannot really know what kind of tools they are using, what I tried to do is to look at those references. And then these references have actually the vast amount of the data set from the Web of Science, which the professor from the information school helped me. So we could end up, yeah, finishing that project well. And then, yeah, that we found that there was actually not a huge change after using, after the era of Google Scholar, but it's still ongoing problem. And I think I need to update it like in 2021 version, instead of just being stuck in 2014. So based on this research, I began to expand my more research interest to the sociology of knowledge. So I was curious what kind of knowledge structure would be like. And then based on that research interest, I could get a postdoc opportunity at Stanford University. And then I was housed in the Graduate School of Education at Stanford, which is again different from my own discipline, sociology. And then that was also a funny story behind it. One day, just my random friend who I didn't really contact for 10 years, just shoot me an email, and he said, I saw your research interest on Facebook, and I think this job is for you. And then he just suggested me that job. I applied it. That was the only one application, postdoc application I submitted, and very luckily I could get the job. So it was, what I'm trying to emphasize throughout my journey is that it's the strength of weak ties. So some ties you didn't really make for expecting something, but you can sometimes just having a lot of favorable connections with random people, you can get the information that you couldn't have really got without the connections. So be generous to everyone. Try to just exploit all the opportunities in the network. I'm not really telling you like talking to people you don't want to talk to, but it's more like the casual, just pleasant and fun conversation with smart people always will give you an opportunity. And also, I was affiliated at Center for Computational Social Science, and then that center is a place where they have those sociologists as well as computational linguists mostly, and then also there was data science from the biology department, and then a very prominent historian from the history department. And then, so it was a very fun group. So we have somewhat had the research group, and when there's a problem, technical problem, like people, of course, very happy to talk to me and then could give me some technical help. And also when we only have ideas and when we cannot really, when they have skills, but when they do not have ideas, sometimes we are, of course, we do love to talk about all of our ideas. So it was just a fun, like interactive group to be inside. And I think I was really lucky to be there. Another really fun opportunity was the Data Science Scholars Program at Stanford. And that was the new program when I was in there. And then that's the fun group where they invite all postdocs and grad students from every department, every school at Stanford University. So I was the only one person from only two social sciences. And there was another from humanities and the law department. And also, of course, there are a lot from computer sciences and biology, and then ocean sciences, and then engineering fields, just every field you can imagine. And then we always present our own work every week for an hour. So we have a pretty dense time to share our ideas. And also we have a regular somewhat informal talk just to share what kind of tools we use and why we like it and why we should use it. So something that I've never heard about, like Julia, I never heard about the kind of language before, but I met the people and they very strongly sometimes insist why we should use it. And also another practices that I really learned a lot from this group is the practice about open science. So there was a huge boom in open science practices going on, and then that was something we can share together as data scientists from every group, that what we should do at minimum to use the data and try to produce those scientific results. So that was the group where I was in at Stanford, and then I did one project, and then that's another fun part of being a social science. I think Professor An also talked about it. So when there's one project, social scientists take like on average 3 years from beginning to the publication for one project. So it's not really uncommon to just to do like 1 or 2 projects throughout their postdocs, which look sometimes too long and lengthy. And then I wrote like 15,000 words for one paper, which is amazingly long, and then a crazy appendixes. Anyway, so I will briefly introduce what my postdoc project was. So the research question was that whether is research explicitly referring women, so like when they study women subjects inside of their research, will they be favored in the job market? That was one question. And another question I had is that is research implicitly associated with women's tradition? Like if they study about students, or if they study about teachers, or if they use more participatory method, it might be somewhat considered, or it might be commonly thought that it's the area for women researchers. And then if doing this research, which somewhat stereotyped as women for women researchers, will it disadvantage in the will it be the disadvantage in the job market or not? So that was our question. And then we use dissertation abstracts as the representation of the scientific knowledge, and then we run the text analysis. There was something wrong in my figure, but anyway, it was a scatter plot showing what kind of terms are some of women-related terms and men-related terms. And of course, you can find those family, teacher, children, like student, school, exam, relationship, those kind of terms are more related with women researchers, and there are other sides of it which share like computing techniques, application network, problem structure method, those kind of terms were more related with men. And we find that those abstracts that are actually just talking about women or studying women or the research about women were advantaged at the job market, but those research that are implicitly associated with women or less likely to be favored at the job market. And the funny thing was that I didn't include it in here. It was more prominent in social science or humanities field than computer science. So it doesn't really matter what kind of research you do in hard sciences, but it does matter in more soft sciences like humanities and social science. And then the last one is that social networks in academia. And then it was basically, it's somewhat the peak, the summary of my experience at the interdisciplinary team, because what I'm trying to do is to create the network structure, and then how those STEM researchers and non-STEM researchers have different network structure. And then the thing we particularly focus on is the multiplex network. So there is not only one network, but there are multiple networks. They advise students together. They write grants together. They write the papers together. And then how they exploit those kind of ties differ between STEM and non-STEM researchers. So we did some network analysis, and then it's not the final results, but what I have found so far from this result, it's an under review paper, is that those STEM researchers were heavily collaborating each other, and then however, non-STEM researchers started to expand their ties from grant. They mostly only did advising before, but they started to expand their networks in grant by writing grants together, and then each moving to the publication area too. So the thing is that non-STEM faculty are more likely to act like a STEM faculty. So there are lab concept that is getting more common in non-STEM as well. I've never heard about the lab when I was in undergrad or master, but it's getting more common to like talk about a lab or make a lab in social sciences as well. So, and then we were trying to find why this kind of trend is happening. And then what we found so far is that those faculty who are adopting this STEM kind of style network is more rewarded in their tenure promotion. So that's what we. And then I moved to KAIST, and then met lovely KAIST family, and then they are doing good, healthy, and then yeah, happy. Yeah, this is a more close shot of this little kids who were just born when I just arrived, like June 2021. And then, yeah, I'm trying to develop my future project to think more about knowledge structure of developing academia. So far, the most of science literature only focuses on Web of Science database, which is primarily just for American or Western academia. And then I know it's more like there's almost no Korean academia in engineering or computer science field, but in still social sciences or humanities, that is Korean academia is one of the prominent community that we publish our work. So I want to know more about knowledge structure of this developing academia and what's the relationship between this like Korean academia with the globalized or international community, and then whether there are any structures inside of it. And yeah, and this is my ongoing work. So I will update it more. I'll try to update it more pretty soon. And that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for your generous introduction. My name is Hyunjoo.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm an economist, and I'm really happy to talk about some of the research which some of you, the audience here, could help us. Okay, so first part, I'm going to talk about how I started economic research, and then I'll go on to what I'm doing now. So I'm going to share my personal research experience, and then development economics might be somewhat you might not heard of this much, so I'm going to give you some concrete examples. Okay, so the motivation. So I'm a development economist. So the prime motivation of development economics is basically we are interested in this very important social question: how to make people better off. So that's the gist of what we are trying to achieve. Something like more income, better environment, so on and so forth. And the way I do research is to go back to history in South Korea, when South Korea is as poor as many sub-Saharan African countries in 1950s, 60s, 70s. And what you see here is the in 1970, what the South Korean government wanted to achieve in 1970, the ideal rural villages where you can have access to electricity, which was very rare at the time, and high quality roofs. As you can see here, they used to use roofs made out of straw. And then they wanted to have nice roads so that their family can visit them back, which was also very rare. The roads are very narrow, so the cars cannot enter the villages. So then in order to transform the rural villages, then what you need to do is to try to develop our environment in a village so that, for example, what you see here is they're trying to widen the roads through some voluntary labor by village members. There was the New Village movement in 1970s in South Korea, the biggest rural development projects that happened in South Korean history. So the question is, so this is my first research when I was a PhD student. So my question is, well, some villages, they did very well in terms of trying to improve their village environment, but that's not always the case. Some villages, the people did nothing, so that they don't have good roads, they have a bad environment, so in the monsoon season, there's always the overflow of water, so on and so forth. So my question is, why do some villages are doing well in terms of improving their villages and some others don't? So the concrete question I had when I was a PhD student was is it something related to cooperation? Maybe some villages, more people are related by blood. So let's say you have more cousins, your aunts are living by them, then maybe you have more incentive to help each other, trying to improve your village. Whereas some other villages, the people are not related, then maybe they don't want to cooperate. But then the problem is, so it's something related to, I guess the data science. If you want to ask this question, it's very difficult because it's very hard to find data. You have to go back to 1970. How do you get this like a family relationship, right? It's not something like you can use some Twitter with a network, but that's impossible. What about the cooperation? That's also very difficult. So you cannot do experiment. It's 50 years ago. So my I would say the emphasis on creating the data sets that can approximately get to the concepts that in the research questions, that has been my focus. So for example, the way I did, So I was at Brown, so in the US. So I came back during the summer vacation while I was a PhD student. I tried to look for any kind of data that something indicates family relationship within a village. So I went to many different places, but I was really fortunate because I found this data. This is the 1930 census, which there's a publication that you can go to. There's a national library in Seocheon where you cannot borrow it. So you have to go there, use your. So I use cell phone to take a photo of the whole book, and then this is an example. So in this book, in this census, it has complete information of the dominant family clan as of 1930 in every village in not only South Korea, but also in North Korea. So, well, in 1930s, we were not divided. So in Korean words, 본관. So any Korean knows the 본관. So this is a 본관 information. How many households are there in this village? So this is an example of Apo Township in village. There's a Miryang Park family with 58 households. So I use that, and then I digitize all this information, and I constructed a measure of family relationship within every village in Gyeongbuk-do, one province in South Korea. So I use it as a measure of family relatedness in my research, and because of this, I was able to graduate within 6 years, which was, I guess, normal nowadays. Anyway, so that triggered my interest in, as you can see, this is, I use the GIS software trying to show the spatial variation in family connectedness, which gave me more interested in application of GIS data and the software. So then I move on to looking at the impact of the Korean War. So this is the red line here is how North Korean army came down in South Korea. So that's the attack routes. So I'm trying to quantify the impact of this invasion on local villages, which also use the GIS software and the old maps. And then something very fortunate for me happened, which is I was able to work with Professor Cha on the very exciting projects about using satellite images, which is also GIS data, to trying to predict what's happening in North Korea, which is kind of like a black box. It's like history, right? So we cannot get any meaningful data out of this country. Right? They don't even produce like a population census. The most recent one is 2008, like 12 years ago. So this is what we are working on now with the Professor Charles IBS group, and you'll get to hear this in more detail 2 p.m. today by one of the authors, Jay. But basically, we use satellite images, and with a very minimal amount of labels, we are able to predict a measure of local economic activity at the grid level of North Korea for about 4 years, going from 2016 to 2019. So that's that's the beginning of we're trying to incorporate the machine learning approach along with the remote sensing data, so trying to have some meaningful measures of economic statistics. And then, my interest is originally from history. So I wanted to do similar stuff, but going back to history. So, if you think about 1970s, we don't have satellite images, but we do have a detailed maps. So what you see here, this is Daejeon, basically. So left-hand side is the Daejeon in around early 1980. And the right-hand side is the early 2000s. So you see that there's a massive expansion of the Daejeon in terms of the urbanization that happens. So I'm trying to use the maps as a replacement of the satellite images to predict local economic activity or urbanization. So that's well, that's very difficult. I mean, you can imagine, you know, there are all these abstract symbols and the text. So you're using like a typical CNN deep learning. It's not working very well. So our group in Sogang University, what we do now is to just extract meaningful signal from the map, which is the color composition, because colors in the map have a different information. For example, you can see here, left-hand side, the green color means this is grass and it's natural, whereas the pink color here is about the roads or urban structure. So we extract the colors and using colors to predict the population and the employment, so on and so forth. So that's what we are doing. And so this is a part where, you know, audience or the professors here can help us technically. That's what we are doing. And this is the what we found so far. So left-hand side is the actual grid level population distribution out of, so it's as of 2015. And this, the right-hand side is the reuse maps to predict population. And it seems maps is capable of predicting the population as well as the remote sensing data, like satellite images. And so another project I'm working on now is that this is the Venezuela. So Venezuela, I don't know whether you know, but the Venezuela is like North Korea of Latin America nowadays. Very, there's a many, there's like an economic disaster that's happening in Venezuela. But again, similar to North Korea, there's a very lack of data coming out of this country. So we don't know how the economic lives of the people are deteriorating. So we are trying to use remote sensing data because we have a really good data from the neighboring country, which is Colombia. So there's very extensive labeled data about wages, local income, employment, so on and so forth. So we're trying to train satellite images from the Colombian side and trying to predict what's happening in Venezuela. That's what we're trying to do now. And finally, coming back to what I did in the beginning, the data digitization, historical data. The problem is that the current OCR algorithm fails at the written Chinese characters. So that's the challenge here, because we need to use this information. These are basically the information about the firms and the land transactions in 1930s in South Korea or 1950s. So what I'm doing now is to collect all these Chinese characters and label them and trying to develop a algorithm to accurately predict written Chinese characters, which you can revolutionize the way we do digitization. So far, it's yeah. But yeah. So let me wrap up. So what I'm trying to show you is that in development economics there are many great potential that the data scientists, computer scientists can join and work together to solve important economic questions. And so I want to go to a panel and then trying to have more discussion. So let me end here. So the conclusion, I'm trying to show you some concrete examples, and there are many different ways that we can solve data availability issues together, both right now, like Venezuela or North Korea, very poor income countries, or we can go back to history as well, where also there's a severe problem of data availability. So let me end here. Thank you very much.